This week, Tom Young talks about harnessing natural curiosity to fix big real-world problems as he shares the journey as founder of Udrew, which offers a platform for homeowners to get council approvals much faster and makes building structures simple and more affordable. Tom shares how it was the catalyst of his own 9-month experience of trying to gain approval for merely erecting a fence, coupled together with his extensive background in geoengineering and drafting, that was the catalyst to work back from the endpoint to design a solution that would prevent others from the same experience. Tom is very open about the process of deciding to leave his safe job to follow the entrepreneurial path and how close he's come to losing everything along the way, yielding many interesting real-life stories from the trenches of business startup. What is impressive is both Tom's natural verve and energy to want to learn and solve problems, as well as his moral compass that has led him on his journey to date. So enjoy, Tom. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards. There are many administrative entities that we encounter, machinations of government, councils, and apparently needless bureaucracy. These entities seem to endlessly chew up time and money, and given perceived authoritative weight behind them, we often just concede to classing them as just the way it is, and hopelessly conceding to them. But not my guest today. My guest today is Tom Young, founder of Udrew, which aims to significantly reduce the burden of building plans and approvals. Tom, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks very much for having us, Bryn.
You're welcome. So one of the questions I always start with is understanding people's relationship with Western Australia. And you were born in Subiaco.
Yes, that's right, at King Eddie's.
Oh, King Eddie's, yeah.
Yep.
So can you give me, what was it like growing up in Western Australia for you?
Oh, I loved it. I originally grew up around the city, so Subiaco, sort of that type of area. And then when I was quite young, we moved up to Geoengineering, which is about an hour north of the city. Beautiful area and fantastic for, a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old energetic boy who was curious about everything. Surprised I'd survived that, actually, with all the accidents I'd get into. But so largely I see myself growing up in the country. That's where I did most of my growing up, on a sheep farm there. And then I hit my teens, and the first thing I wanted to do was move back to the city, of course.
Yep.
And now I'm getting a bit more...
That's where the action is?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And our closest neighbours were 1.5 kilometres away, so it was a pretty boring place when you get to that kind of social age. And sheep only keep your interest that long. So that's pretty bad.
It does,
actually. Cancel that part. And so, the first thing I did was got my driver's license and moved back to the city.
Yeah.
And now, as I'm, ripening, I suppose, getting mature, the urge just keeps growing to move back up there. So it's a funny cycle, but I can always see myself ending up back at a farm somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
would you class yourself as a proud West Aussie?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I love it here, and I don't think I'd live anywhere else in the world. Well, not long term, maybe temporarily, but I'd always come back to Perth. I think we've just got it so easy here, and we don't really realise it, and how spoiled and lucky we are. And the more travelling I do, the more I appreciate it as well. Don't get me wrong, the only other place I'd consider living would be New York, probably. And it's polar opposite to Perth, but it just works. But I'd always come back to Perth, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely love it here.
Superb. So there's, as I looked into your story to prepare for this, there's a strong problem-solving aspect to your story. It's driven by your curiosity. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I understand that part of that curiosity comes out from a significant life event when you were around about, 19, and you had a rare blood disorder diagnosis. Yeah,
definitely. That spurred a lot. I'd say it was something I was always born with, but that was kind of the catalyst to speed it up. So when I was 19, I got diagnosed with a very rare blood condition, which basically means I don't have immunity to anything respiratory related. So like a cold could kill me kind of thing.
Wow.
So if you've ever seen that horrible movie Bubble Boy, it's pretty much that, except I'm one stage below being locked in a bubble. So finding that out at 19 going on 20, I was getting towards the final bit of my uni stuff. I had all these dreams and aspirations about doing all this manly stuff. Like I wanted to join the Air Force as well and be a fireman and all the typical kind of teenage invincible boy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was in the process of a few of those things, and I was very physically fit back then, believe it or not. Things have changed quite a lot now. And I was just about to go semi-professional with ice hockey in in the US. So I just played for Australia in ice hockey, and was getting to the point where a bunch of colleges were offering me scholarships over there. So all that peak was just happening, and then I was told couldn't play ice hockey anymore, couldn't go to university anymore, and basically my whole life was just like, nope, you got to start again, kind of thing, which was pretty depressing. Well, because medically insurance wouldn't cover me playing ice hockey. I was studying geology, and geology is a very practical science, so it involves going to the middle of nowhere and licking rocks. And so my doctors wouldn't let me leave anywhere that's more than an hour away from a hospital at all times. So the dean at the time was a bit unforgiving and said, well, look, you can't graduate if you can't do the practical. So what I did was continued studying, did all the theory myself, lying in hospital beds over a few years, and continued studying just because I loved doing it and really interested in it. And been immobile for, sort of 20 hours at a time, like not been able to move at all. It's like being a quadriplegic, except I could move my arms, I suppose, so I could still read. It just gave me the great opportunity to entertain myself with my mind. And so a lot of that was just coming up with creative solutions for things, and I found that fun. And it was, interesting thing to do when you can't really do anything else. And so I taught myself a lot of other things, got really interested in quantum physics for a while, which I probably still couldn't explain to you what it's about. But
we've had a leading quantum physicist on
I
the
think
podcast.
you mentioned that. It sounds fascinating.
Check it out.
So there's all these things that I'm just painfully curious about. Ever since I was a kid, I can remember if I can't understand how something works, I need to find out, or it's like an itch that I just can't scratch. So
that's why something you were born with, or was that role model?
I think I was very much born like that, but it kind of got more so as I got older, because I realised I had the ability to go learn these things that I was interested in instead of just guessing or whatever. And when the internet came out, that gave me that tool.
Oh.
So before then, we just had a copy of very outdated World Book encyclopedias at the farm. And that was my guide to the universe growing up. I actually read through every volume from A to Z several times, just because there was nothing to do at the farm. I've just always been driven by trying to understand things, and it's just my big driver. So from about 19 to early 20s, I did get hit pretty hard by being told I had to start again, and I was told my life expectancy was probably not very long, which is a bit of a blow to confidence and things. And so there's a few years of partying and having too much fun.
Was that just trying to sweep it under the carpet?
A little bit, and just going, oh, bugger it, and why not, so I did a bit of travelling and drank way too much, and best years of my life, actually. But then, as I started getting to late 20s, I kind of thought, well, bugger it, I'm still really interested in this stuff, and I want to do something, and even if it's just for fun, I want to kind of understand some things, and so I did, and about the age of 30, some new medication came out which makes it much more controllable.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
So it's, I've got past the deadline they gave me, and now it's just like, I don't really take much the doctors say about that stuff too seriously, because could happen to any of us, really, hit by a bus or meteorite.
You said you take medication regularly, mate.
I've got to do 2 blood infusions a week still.
Yeah.
So that's pretty horrible stuff, really. I've got a little nursing station at home, so I have to stab myself in the stomach twice a week and, pump blood into me. It's not really blood, like vampire kind of thing. It's like a component, so it's like clear maple syrup. It's only 30 mils at a time, but that sort of made me bulletproof now against getting sick. So, case point, me and my wife got quite sick a couple of weeks ago. It lasted 2 days with me, and she's still recovering now. So I feel sorry for her.
From one end of the scale to the other.
I'm kind of bulletproof for stuff like that now. So it's giving me a lot more confidence, and just taught me that you can't let these things get in your way. Like just you got to go with it and do what you love, and that's the only way to really keep moving forward and enjoy yourself and get the most out of life. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And I can probably see how that plays forward into the story we're going to listen to.
No, it's been very much, that was a pivot point, I guess, of my life. It would have been very different. Never know, I could be Mr. December for the WA firemen, but things didn't turn out that way. And Yeah, I probably need to be a bit fitter than I am now to even qualify for that. But yeah, it's definitely shaped me and very much guided my journey. And yeah, it was a crucial point to get me in this direction. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So Udrew, at a summary level, can you give the listeners an idea of what is the problem that you're trying to solve with it?
Yeah, it's there's not one specific problem per se, because it's quite a broad-ranging solution to a broad, complex area. So in a nutshell, though, it'd be saying that we're trying to fix the broken building industry from start to finish. So broken
building industry.
Yeah, every aspect of it's broken. So I mean, it's easy for me to say, but you know, growing up, that was my career. There's always been in the building industry, so I've seen it from that side, the internal side, and the side trying to build something myself. And it just doesn't work for either party. So for small, typical things you want to build, it's not a great return on investment for the building industry. So, and generally, you know, they're the types of things that might be built once every 10 years at a house. They're not repeat customers. They're not going to... so as a result, they generally get underserviced and overcharged just because it's not economical for the building industry, but they still do it.
These are things like extensions and...
Yeah, smaller... home improvement kind of things, like,
right.
You know, even just building a retaining wall or a swimming pool,
rather than building a whole house.
Yeah. So the profit margins aren't there. So the industry generally puts them at the bottom of the pile, and you know, they'll get to them, but it'll just take time and cost you quite a bit. And then you've got the government side of things. So we've all been there, I think. And that was largely the inspiration behind it. So I'd had enough in about 2008. I was finishing up some renos at my place. I realised I forgot to put the plans in for the front fence, which I thought, no big deal. I used to be a structural draftsman, so I dusted off the computer and quickly drew it up. My dad is an engineer, which is very handy, and he was on site with me that day, and so he signed the plans, dropped them off at the council that afternoon, and it took 7.5 months to get just an approval stamp, which is ridiculous. It's just a simple...
Was this for a fence you'd already put up?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was about to put it up. So I did the right thing, waited for approval and things, and it took 7.5 months. And so for a 4-year build, to be delayed 7.5 months at the end, it was just, I'd had enough. So I finally got all the documents stamped and approved, and hooray, could finally build my fence. And then I noticed that they'd misspelt my street name by 1 letter on the approval documents. And this is when the government was just introducing resale laws. So you can't sell your house if basically all the documentation's not there for everything you get. And because my street name was spelt wrong, I was a bit younger and a bit more naive. And so I let them know. I just said, look, is that going to be a problem? And they told me to halt all work immediately, and it needs to be re-approved just to put fix a typo. It was literally, they'd forgot to put the letter U in the word fourth for 4th Avenue. And so in their credit, it only took 2.5 months to recheck that time. So 9.5 months later, I had an approval to build a fence, which was ridiculous. And
it is.
And yeah, it's just, it was all to code as well. Nothing needed fixing. It was fine. And so it got me thinking, you know, I could have had a baby in less time. Well, not me personally, probably my wife, but you know what I mean.
You collectively.
Yeah, collectively. Yeah, the team thing. And I was just thinking, it's not that hard. Why is this just so painful? And I'm from the industry, so I understand.
Yeah. What is it you'd been doing previously?
So I started off as a structural draftsman. So going through high school, instead of being stuck at the farm, I chose to go learn something. So I got a job at an engineering company, getting taught how to be a structural drafty, basically. So by the time I finished high school, I was a fully qualified structural draftsman before I went on to uni, which was really, really good, and it's taught me a lot that time I was a drafty. And then, studied geology at uni, went back to the building industry, found a great niche. So all these big engineering companies were needing geotechnical laboratories set up.
Right.
So I completed all that stuff at uni already. So put me in a rare position where I understood the design engineering side, and I also understood the geological side. So it's about bringing them together to make a laboratory that would be able to do all the geo-analysis of building sites. So, and we use that to calculate the footings and foundations and the concrete that's needed, as well as the steel and a bunch of other things like about the actual building site itself that we need to then do the design.
Yep.
So I specialised in that. Probably the last decade, I've been doing that. I co-founded another engineering company and did the same thing. And basically, that type of work is for young boys who never grow up. Basically, you get paid to play with mud, and it's great fun. And for me, the geology side, I just find fascinating. So we'd send out drillers to get core samples to be sent to the lab. We'd do a bunch of tests, and then I'd get all the numbers and go kind of CSI on it and tell them, calculate the optimal use of materials for the concrete and things. So a lot of people glaze over of boredom when I talk about that side, but I find it fascinating. So to me, get a core sample in, it's like reading a book. You can tell every detail about where that grain of sand came from, when it was formed, how it got to this site,
right?
Then what effects that has on everything else, and water table as well, as we chatted about. It's about putting all these bits of information together to form this complete story of that building site, and then how we can most economically make the house or whatever it is stand up on that building site.
Yep.
And so that was my job.
Move away or anything.
Because the ground, it actually moves throughout the year. We don't notice it, but it can move quite a lot, and it's enough to rip a house in half. So if you don't have the right site preparation, so that's like putting the right thickness of that yellow sand stuff on, and then the concrete to kind of keep it in place. It can cause hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. So my job was to stop that.
Yeah.
So
so you'd done all this stuff, and yet when it comes to the simple job of doing a fan, which probably doesn't need a load of geoengineering to it.
A little bit, but not much. I've probably gone overkill on that side, to be honest, with the system. But that is my passion. But so it gave me a great oversight of the whole process. So from the building industry side of the design and structural engineering, and the geo stuff, obviously, to the building itself. So me and my friends built quite a lot of stuff just for fun. That's a bit weird, but helped them out with projects. They'd help me out, and so I learnt the practical side as well. Excuse me. And the council side was a little bit less familiar for me, but I figured, I'll give it a stab anyway. So in 2008, when I had my difficulties, I started working backwards from the problem, like why is it so difficult? So Google Earth was very new at the time, and it was my new obsession. And so I saw the importance of having spatial data available. It was just huge. And so from that, all that was really missing were the variables that are needed within the engineering equations. Like, it's just physics and maths and algebra. So all that was missing was the algebra, and we could get most of that from the spatial data now. We can calculate, the slopes of the land, and we can see on the satellite imagery if there's a tree there or not. Yeah. So there's a lot of potential in there. So I slowly worked through the engineering equations. They were just working beautifully. Surprised me actually how easily that translated. But there was a few things that were missing, and that took almost a decade of research on my end to figure out those few that were missing. And light bulb moment, most of it was geo. I was like, hold up, that's my specialty. Yeah. And the problem came down to the fact that it's such a boring field that no one's studied it.
Right.
And so a lot of people play tennis or, whatever as a hobby. I just do boring things. So I made it my mission to find out why.
You keep saying they're boring. Who's told you that they're boring?
I think it's my friend group. Like, they get like, they've learnt not to go on a road trip with me. I'll just go, see that mound of sand or that pile of rocks, and I'll tell them all about it. And they just glaze over with boredom.
You're going on road trips with the wrong people.
No, my wife's learnt to appreciate it now, so she's really she's into the rocks and stuff. Yeah, brainwashed her slowly. So what was missing was the data. So I realised that in 2008, and so from that point, I started collating every core sample, very, very, very detailed, in a giant database, like 70 points of data for every, core sample that was sent in.
Yeah.
And slowly built that up, and was using it to help predict properties of sites remotely, just roughly back then. But then I tied it in with the spatial
what
data.
Doing previously.
Well, this is when the idea for Udrew came about, about 2008. Working backwards from the problem. Spatial data wise, we had now the ability to measure distances from things. So That's largely what most of the council checks are for, like how far is it from the boundary, your neighbour, whatever. So the spatial data, that got rid of a huge chunk. But with the geo stuff, there was just no data available. So fast forward to about 2016, I finally had enough. And so I had 4,000 core samples from around Perth and WA.
Finally had enough what?
Data.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
where did you get all these?
Just all the labs that I was setting up. Every sample that came in, I'd log all the results, describe it, and put 70 points of information about it. And so I used those 4,000 samples to create algorithms and equations that intermingle with the spatial data and some of the engineering stuff to very accurately predict the geomechanics. So why that's important is usually that would take 6 to 8 weeks to figure out at the moment. So you'd need a driller to go to site, drill a certain amount of samples, send it to the lab for testing, analysis. Then that would have to then go to an engineer.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. So by streamlining that side, it saves about 2 months, and we do it now in about 0.25 of a second.
Oof.
So it's very powerful when you bring these things together. And so what was difficult about it is the data just doesn't exist. So it was coming up with creative ways to create the data. So the longest one was the geo, because there was just no way to do that. I needed physical samples and things to create the algorithms. But the other things were, it's like, how do you get two unrelated big data sets to create a new set of data? So it's coming up with algorithms in the middle to extrapolate and learn from that to create something that doesn't exist.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed that aspect of being creative and trying to figure out solutions that way. So we did a lot of, we've got a lot of algorithms now that deal with wind tunneling effects, that it learns, it does a 16-kilometre sweep around the lot and learns where houses are and how that affects wind blowing and trees. And so it was, coming up with those things. There was just lots of little things like that. So I really enjoyed the challenge of that. And maybe I'm a bit OCD, but figuring out how everything interconnects is sort of one of my drivers. And it comes down to that curiosity I've got. Is I'd like to understand things and try and learn them if I don't, and most of the time I can come up with a solution. So it's just
certainly that interconnectedness.
Yeah,
I find myself drawn to patterns.
Yeah, absolutely. And without sounding like a conspiracy theorist or something like that, but everything is in its way interconnected. Like geology, especially. Geology is the science of the Earth and the universe as well. So it all comes down to how everything interrelates with each other, and then figuring out how you can then tie them together. And I guess that's the goal of physicists, to come up with the equation that solves everything.
Yes.
That's way out of my scope and intellect, but we're trying to do similar things with the building industry, with all these interrelated, seemingly separate fields. So we've got surveying, engineering, architecture, the drawing of the plans as well, and materials, and there's a number of things that are very different fields, but they're all connected to get to the same outcome, which is building something. And so it's very much just working backwards from the problem and just slowly ticking off as things were solved until we've got to this point now where we're just about to sign our go live documents with our first government. So it's very exciting.
So you've got all these algorithms, you've got these core samples, you've created these algorithms, you've worked back. So what is it you've actually built?
Yep. So it's a great question. Still trying to figure it out. It's a monster. No. So it's a single location to do your entire building project from start to finish.
Right.
And a new goal, actually, it makes me laugh. So we're streamlining. We're making building and design as easy as ordering a pizza. So if you can use an iPhone, you can be your own engineer and do your whole project from start to finish.
So you'd sort of draw it out in there, and then it sort of tells you whether you can or can't do this stuff.
Yeah, the user does it themselves. So basically, they type in where they want whatever it is they're building built. They select what they want to build, and you can select multiple things, and then scaled satellite imagery comes up. It shows you boundaries and things like that. And you literally follow the instructions, just sketch the outline of whatever it is you're building. And in real time, as you're sketching, it'll either go red, orange, or green. So it's like a traffic light. Red is like, it's blatantly wrong. You're building your pull half in your neighbour's lot, for example, or
Right.
onto a road or something. It's just something you just can't do.
Yeah.
Orange is something subjective, and it happens only about 1% of the time.
Yep.
And that's something that it's slightly against the council rule, but they're a bit lenient, and you can appeal, and you should be able to get it passed.
Yeah.
And green is everything meets every
It's good
regulation, every
Yeah.
national, local, every engineering principle. And so if it doesn't comply, what it does is fixes it. So as you're sketching it, assuming you've got a nice green line, if there's a nasty council rule that you just don't know about, what it will do, it will just tell you, look, we're going to have to fix this. Would you like it to be fixed? And press OK, and it just redesigns it around that problem. So say if there's a nasty underground utility there, it'll just design something to come up with a compliant solution.
Put the deep end at the other end.
Yeah.
If it's a swimming pool.
Yeah, stuff like that. So it learns as you're drawing, and gives you the option to fix it all as you're drawing it.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I should really show you, but
Yeah,
kind of. It's a bit hard without the visual thing,
Yeah.
but basically, sketch what you want to build as you're sketching it. It's checking against every regulation, calculating every brick, bag of sand, nail that you need, and also creating the most efficient structural design. So it's always going to be the most economical and most practical solution every time. So. And once you've done the basic sketch, it generates the drawings for you. So all the concrete's been calculated at this point, all the steel, every component, and you can physically see what it is you're building, which is great. You don't have to wait a month for a drafty to draw up something. And if you decide you might want it limestone instead of brick or whatever, you just click and change it, and it regenerates it, recalculates it. And all
so have you had to pull in all the different rules and regulations into what you're doing, or do you?
Yeah, the first, because we're just about to go live with our first council, we've been very much manual process of setting that up, which has not been fun. So very lucky though to have the City of Wanneroo on board with their support. They've patiently sat with me for the last year and a half, and we've gone through it together to create the template. So we know for this structure, these are the rules that it's checking against. So it's taken a while, and a lot of highlighters and big piles of regulations we've had to go through, figure out how they all interconnect.
Yeah.
And it's looking good to go live now.
That must have been a useful experience for them to actually reflect on.
It was very interesting. Because we had them all in the same room, which it doesn't often happen. I'd say, okay, so this regulation, this is my interpretation. I just want to check we're on the same wavelength, and I get 4 different interpretations of the same rule. So a few of those popped up, and we ended up coming to a consensus, and that's what's coded up in the system. Yeah. The next council gets much easier. From there, we just literally duplicate the back end's perimeters, I guess.
And see where they're slightly different.
Yep. And then the third gets even easier, because we've got all these things, and they can just select which ones they want.
So the first one's always going to be tricky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
that's where it's taken the time, where I'm so grateful for the City of Wanneroo for their patience and support. And
so will it mean that when you've landed on your design, you've got all the green lights, green lines, then you can in effect go submit.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Yeah, my record was 1 minute 36 seconds from a blank piece of paper, I guess, to fully completed engineering, design, and council approval. So,
and council approval.
Yeah, but in realistic terms, I did build the system, so I know how to use it, and it did take a couple goes to get it down to 1 minute 36. But we're aiming to get people to be able to do the whole thing from start to finish in less than 20 minutes.
Wow.
And our user
That's
tests,
just unreal.
they've come up with the 20-minute mark too, our first batch of user testing, so we're on target. Hopefully we'll get it quicker. But the whole system, it's totally dynamic, so we don't use any libraries of just pictures of drawings. Everything's calculated mathematically, and that's where it gets its power from. So it learns as you're drawing and rewrites itself to suit every detail. It's just doing so much in the back that it's, if I do say so myself, it's pretty clever.
It sounds incredible.
I think without visual context, it's hard to picture, but basically it's 4 steps, and you've got your plans
and the approval to go with it.
Yeah, and if you want as well, it prints out the full shopping list of materials. We're not forcing people to buy anything through us. We're just providing it because we can. And that's largely a lot of the things we are doing. It's just because we can. We're not going to make money off it. It's just making lives easier. So it's how do we make the person who just wants to build something, how do we make their lives easier? How do we make the industry's life easier? And the government's. So it's about getting all these cogs of the wheels spinning in motion at the same time. And that's where I see a lot of the challenges is getting the support from everyone at the same time so we can come together to make this thing.
Who is the actual client and where's the revenue generated from?
So right now, there's not many of them. So we're not live properly yet, but we're doing some real jobs at the moment. So we're doing some like B2C, so like just people who want to build stuff.
Yeah. I wondered whether it was the council or the actual client.
The first few months, it's definitely the building industry. So we're making tools for tradies and builders to be able to just go to site and do the plans with their clients straight away and just start building then, so they don't have to wait. There's no downtime. They're our first focus. Right. The reason for that is we want to learn a bit more as well from them and polish the tool so it suits them and gets the most benefit before we start just releasing it to everybody,
the general public.
So we want to work with the building industry as a priority, and then eventually it'd be nice to have the tool just online. Anyone can log in, and from that select their brickie, select their roof tiler, and manage their whole project basically. That's the goal, and we're getting closer to it every day. It's still a bit to go, but it's very exciting. So.
Tell me about the point where you'd been tinkering with the problem and you suddenly got to, shit, this could be a business.
The eureka.
Yes.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly when that happened. So that was 2016. Actually, it was late 2015. So I finally had enough geodata. And so I made this huge Excel spreadsheet that would just mathematically tell me yes or no. And to my surprise, I got a yes, it worked. And I was just blown away. I thought it was going to take years more. And I've been working on it for so long, I wasn't expecting it to work the first time. So from that, I was like, holy shit, this can actually work. And then how do we make it into a business? And how do I pay for it? And that's when all those questions came. And usually that was the point where I'd go, it's a nice idea, but I've got to continue on with my life and pay bills. And
you had a regular job at this point.
Yeah. And this was, I fought with myself, said, nope, go ahead with one of your ideas. So I've had so many other ideas which I've canned and just left, proven they worked, and just kind of walked away because I didn't have the confidence to go ahead with them.
Was that almost enough for you to prove, this works, so I know within myself it's fine, but never actually taken action on it?
Yeah, and that was due to confidence because I didn't understand the business world and things like that. And then 5 years later, it was always 5 years, someone would release it and they'd end up a billionaire for an idea that I had 5 years earlier and I'd proved out and things. So this one was the first time I thought, no, I'm going to give it a go.
Why was this different?
I'd had enough of seeing my old ideas taking off and, just going phenomenally. And it was a challenge. Every year I like to learn something new. 1 year it was flying a helicopter. Another one it was getting my scuba license. And another one it was like gardening or something boring. But every year there's something. And so I thought this would be a good one for that year, just to give it a go and sit and try and learn a little bit. And I was very lucky at the time. Had a external business sort of coach running our monthly management meetings at work, and he could see my frustration. Like, I've got all these ideas, but I didn't know how to present them and sell them to people to get them as excited as I was.
Yes.
So he taught me a little bit about that.
Take them on the epiphany journey.
Yeah. Because usually I just show some giant spreadsheet with incomprehensible
with
numbers,
babble, and then that's it, glaze over.
Yeah. So he recommended I try for a scholarship at Curtin Ignition, which is like a 6-day, they sort of nicknamed it like a 6-day Master of Business course. So it's very intensive. And so I applied for that and very lucky, and I got a scholarship through the city of Udrew actually. And that gave me a 6-day intensive look at like how to secure your intellectual property, how to market, how to pitch your idea, and all the business stuff, which I didn't have a clue about. And so that gave me a lot of confidence. So even if you step back slightly, so once I'd proven, like the green light came on saying it worked, no one would believe me because it's such a complicated thing. And so I realized that I had to be able to show them visually that it worked. So design something and it draws the correct things. So I went around trying to get quotes from programmers and I just couldn't afford it. It was just for someone who had bugger all money. And so that made me very depressed. But then the light bulb was like, fuck it, I'm going to teach myself coding. So over 2 months, I taught myself coding and ended up creating the first working beta demo. And I've got it still working actually. It still draws fence designs and driveways and things. It works beautiful. So that's what I actually got the scholarship through, that little visual demo. And so, it's just all about if you get a hurdle, just find a way around it. And there's always a solution out there. If it means a slight detour, then you can get back on track, so be it. But you can always keep moving forward if you're creative and persistent enough, I guess. It's
What was it like breaking the news to your wife? Right, this idea is going to be the one that I actually act on, was she? And to tell those around you. Yeah,
well, she was just fantastic, and she's still 100% with me on the journey. Just on the way here, she got a bit teary over the phone when I told her about that meeting that I had this morning. Like every significant step, we're just so, both of us, involved in it. She's just as involved as I am. And she's helped a lot bouncing ideas off. She gives me ideas as well, and she's just as in it as I am. So we still get these moments of shock, like, holy shit, did that actually happen? Like, so, it still happens frequently. It's like, I can't believe we've got this far. And it's working, and this person wants to meet now, and blah blah blah. It's very exciting, very stressful too. But
obviously, there's like this outer achievement of getting something up and running and this, that, and the other. But what does this mean to you personally?
Yeah, it's a bit of a fuck you to a lot of people out there who have told me in the past, like why bother? It's never going to work. And it's not just with this concept. This is with hundreds of other things I've presented in the past and wanted to pursue. And so it's a bit of a thing to them as well, like saying, see, I told you I was onto something. But that's a big one for me. And it's also, my big driver is just, I want to understand and learn it still. And for me, this is a good opportunity to keep pushing that and keep coming up with cool ways to solve big problems.
Is that what you enjoy doing?
Oh, I love it. That's my big driver, is solving problems in creative ways, just to make life easier for everybody. And the beautiful thing about construction technology is there's no one doing it. It's very much pioneering, a lot of it. It sounds arrogant. There's other really great companies out there, but compared to like financial technology or medical, it's very much at its early days. And so there's a lot of open field, and there's still a lot of problems out there that need solving. And so it's a great opportunity for us to, kind of get our pick of which problems we want to solve, and how we can bring the maximum benefit to everyone else. So a lot of it is about just making cool things that solve big problems, and that's a big driver for me. So, yeah.
So tell me about, you taught yourself coding, you made your first thing, you've done the Ignite program. Tell me about the journey from there.
Yeah, so that was a huge wake up. Now that I had a bit of confidence and understood the business aspects and some legal aspects too, and how to present things, I was still working full time at that point. Every night I locked myself away for 6 hours or so and just got everything out of my head onto a giant document, which was about, I think, 60 pages long, for this concept on how it would work, how it would come together. It's basically Udrew for Dummies.
Doing 2 jobs at once then, in effect.
Yeah, and I just had my first child at that point too. Ooh. So sleep wasn't really a common occurrence.
Priority.
Still really isn't, but I'm lucky in that sense. I don't really sleep much anyway, so didn't hit me too hard. But got another baby coming next month actually, so we'll see how that goes. But so I got everything out of my head onto paper, and then took it to some lawyers to see if we could get some patents. And he said there's about 15 patents within that document that no one's ever done before. And I was like, oh, wow, cool. That's very exciting. Unfortunately, patents cost an arm and a leg. So I could afford the poor man's patent, which was a provisional, which kind of covered me a year. I then got another patent the following year. And I've just submitted my PCT patents yesterday. So that was cool. So the first thing I did was, get everything out, make sure it still made sense.
Yeah.
And it was great because it gave me the opportunity to put it all together, this huge net of seemingly unrelated things, and how to get it in a flow so it worked, so it made sense. And it worked beautifully. From that point, it took until 2017, where I started looking around to get proper professional programmers to start working on the real version. So I'm still working closely with Wanneroo at this point. And they were just fantastic.
What point did they come on board?
They gave me the scholarship for Ignition.
Yep.
So sort of it continued on from that. They saw the value in it. And so it was about setting up a pilot test. And so we set up a very limited pilot test early, mid 2017. And we got some great results from that. And it sort of validated everything as well. So it showed that we could save them about $300,000 per annum just in doubling up typing input, from forms that are filled out, and
wow, and
reducing the human error factors and things. It was just amazing. And it sped up the process by 96% on their side. And that was back then. And I see the system back then as being quite crude and outdated, very outdated compared to what it is now. So it was really positive to have these actual metrics, and that really helped. So I quit my job, my beautiful, secure, stable, fun, interesting
biggest,
job.
Scariest moment?
It was very scary. And my wife had a lot of input on that. She was with me 100%. And so it wasn't me just recklessly quitting and coming on, honey, by the way, journey. We have no income. But I timed it quite well, so it was my long service leave, and I'd made sure my tax return was going to be a bit bigger that year, so I'd sort of seen it coming, prepared. And so
it's almost like a perfect time to do it. You got a bit of income for a period.
Yeah, and so that was very scary still. So I had a year and a bit without an income after that, which is very difficult, seeing it tick down like that. I'm still trying to build this thing, which is getting more expensive every week.
Did you start to have the whole...
every week I still have that. It's getting less and less now, I've got to say. But seeing the money go down, I ended up getting an investment loan out with my house as collateral to help pay for development, which is still on there. I'm still paying back. So if it does, fail miserably and spectacularly, I will lose my house still to this day, but it's getting less likely every day, which is big relief. But then I was very fortunate. Literally, we'd run out of money 6 days earlier, but I'd managed to raise $500,000 last year. So that saved us. Basically, it was at the point where we're going to have to sell the house. Like 6 days without any money at all. We were selling DVDs to the cashies. I'd already sold my car. My dignity was gone long before then as well. So it was very close. It was very, very close, but managed to get some awesome investors on board. But the troubling thing was I'd actually turned down a lot of money before that. The problem I've got is my principles, and so it was from people I didn't think had the right intentions or things like that. So the hardest thing to do was turn down $1 million check when you've got 2 weeks of like living money available before you lose your house. But I literally did that a couple of times, and I don't regret it. It was very stressful at the time, but I'm glad I stuck through to my principles and morals, and I've got some fantastic investors on board now. Couldn't be happier with them. They're experts in their own field, so we've got a lawyer, I've got a civil engineering company, and 2 of Australia's best tech kind of entrepreneur specialists as well. So really great foundation to start with, and very lucky to get them. So from that, I could finally get some staff. So I've just got the superstar team come on board, and I actually poached them all from Queensland. So they've just flown over in November, and we've got 7 staff now, and looking at having possibly up to 18 or 19 by July. So,
Wow.
So yeah, I've been kind of doing the work of 19 people for the last 2 years, and it's like, sorry, but it's just killed me. But learnt a lot, and wouldn't change it at all, except for maybe go back and reassure myself if I had a time machine. Say, look, just stick with it. You're doing it right. But
Yeah.
at the time, the roller coasters just go from epic high, like, oh my God, I've got something, it's working, everything's going to be just fine, to an hour later, it's like, oh God, my house, I'm going to lose my house. And so it's an emotional roller coaster. And I learnt a lot about my inner workings from it, and my inner psyche as well. But it comes just down to persistence and determination. And I'm very passionate about what I do, and positive that it's going to make a huge difference to the building industry. And, you know, it's just got too many benefits. So
how has it been received?
Really well. It's funny.
Public industry.
Yeah, it's funny. So the building
Has
industry.
it had any resistance as well?
No, actually, just support. So what we're doing is, because it's the jobs that are just a pain in the ass for people, a lot of builders, they do them, but it's not their target. There's not much profit in it. It's a pain in the ass because these people want to
like you said,
typically change their mind a lot, and it goes back and forward quite a lot. And so by us freeing up that from them, they're able to concentrate on these bigger projects and the more profitable things, and make their jobs more efficient. So with Udrew, for the builders aspects, we're turning these kind of low return, I guess, and pain in the ass clients into A+ clients. So we're letting them do it all straight away, instantly, and for 70% less than it would usually cost. And so it's encouraging for the builders. They can now do these jobs straight away and still make money off it. Yeah. And so it's just about making it more efficient for everybody. And sort of related. So from the council's perspective, a few planners initially were a little bit of friction, because they were seeing it's the replacement of their jobs, which to me, I've always seen it as the polar opposite of that. So you don't go to uni for 3 years, study urban planning and design to approve a wall or, you know, a garage or something. So they have much the same issues that the building industry does, where these people, they might submit their plans on a napkin. As a drafty, you'd be surprised how much we'd get that, about 4 or 5 a year. It's drawn, always McDonald's napkins too. I don't know what it is. But, so it's sort of streamlined, just making their lives easier as well, and giving them more resources to actually focus on smart city planning, urban development, and doing the things they actually studied and care about, rather than approving a small retaining wall or, you know, a driveway or something like that. So it's freeing up their time to do things that they want to do. And in return, that's better for us ratepayers, because we're going to get better service, better city design. And so it's kind of about filtering out the stuff that we can do, and then letting them concentrate on the complex things, and giving them the tools to make their lives easier. So, which then has flow-on effects to us. So, well, at least that's my, you know, big romantic vision of it. But it seems to be looking pretty good at the moment.
You know, you're talking to a former management consultant. If people lose jobs because they're doing administration that's non-value add, that can be mechanised or replaced with technology, then that's a good thing. Absolutely. Who's making jobs for jobs' sake.
But it was really interesting, the feedback we had from the planning department after our first 2 pilots. So they started off a bit reluctant, but by the second one, I think they'd given it 96 or 94% satisfaction on it. So they'd really turned around, and they can see that it's just there to make their lives easier, and hopefully provide a better service for, you know, the constituents in the end. So it was really positive, because at first it bugged me a bit, like people going, it's going to take our jobs and things, but it's more of a compliment,
challenge, isn't it?
I think it's more complementary to their job, so it'll allow them to do more efficiently, and so that more work with more overheads, hopefully, and less cost for the person wanting to build something. So it's sort of like about getting the balance, so it's the win-win-win between government, industry, and the person wanting something built. And that was the hard thing. So a lot of the business people, they come and give me the advice, you should be making it 3 times more expensive if you can do it straight away and more accurately. But that's against our principles. We want to make it more efficient and more affordable to encourage more people to want to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting the different perspectives we get from that. Yeah. So.
Obviously, listening to the story of how you've gone from idea through all the way through to losing your home and then investing and etc. How has the marketing pitch evolved? Your marketing with it, because you have to tell a clear and concise story.
Yeah, God, I still struggle with that, really. But started off, there was none. The pitch was basically, I figured out how to do this really cool thing, and people were like, well, why do we give a shit? And so Ignition really taught me the foundations of how to, sell the idea better. So it has changed a lot, and it does change slightly on the context of who I'm talking to. So marketing pitch for the government's very different to the pitch I'll give to the Bricky or the giant tech company. They
all have different challenges, don't they?
They do, and they see different values in different areas. So it does change a bit, and it's constantly evolving. But it did come down to me literally just writing, this is a valuable thing, this is a valuable thing, and figuring out the perspectives of each of those different ones. And a lot of it came from them telling me. So I didn't, and I still don't have all of the answers. And I ask them as well, like, what's the worst thing about your job? What do you hate doing the most? And they'll tell me a bit, and we go, oh, good, the system does that already. That's good. And if it's something that we hadn't thought of, we can look at a way to put it in the system to make their lives easier, if it's economically feasible for us to do at least. And that's what it's about, learning as much as we can from the different segments, because it's such a broad covering thing, and trying to get it the best product that we can for everybody. So I don't know, did you want me to give you the marketing pitch now, or?
I'm kind of curious in that. I guess, well, you can if you want. It's just been interesting. I find it interesting, as you go deeper into the solution, you start to see more and more benefits that it delivers to different people, and it becomes clearer and clearer. And with that, so the marketing pitch does as well. Yeah,
it's a complex beast. Very much so. So for the government side, the marketing pitch we'd usually talk about with them is the resources that it saves and how it saves it, and then how it provides better value for their ratepayers. So before a lot of this started, I must admit I didn't have much sympathy for the local governments. We all pay our rates with gritted teeth, and I'll leave it at that because I still need to talk to a few. But I didn't realise how much of an issue it is for them until I got talking to them. Yes. And it's given me a lot of empathy now, which I just didn't realise it was such a problem. And these poor buggers, they didn't stand a chance from the start. So I've seen the internal flow processes of a few councils. There's 40 points of contact just to get an approval for something really small. How the fuck anything's ever got it approved? I have no idea, because it's just so complex. So they're dealing with outdated systems. They're dealing with really poor quality submissions, which, it's not always the person's fault submitting it, because the forms are just so confusing sometimes. Yeah. And, I mentioned the napkins before with the drawings and people changing their minds. And so they're in this awkward position between getting yelled at by a builder wanting their plans quicker, or yelled at by a local who doesn't understand why they can't build that or this. Yeah. And so a lot of it for them is about perception as well, that they're trying to do something. They've recognised that, yes, we need to improve our processes, and we're doing something about it. So that's a bit of that feedback I've had from the government, and largely what I do in the pitch when I'm talking to them. But the big exciting one for me, and this comes down to my analyst background with the geo stuff, I love my numbers and data. So because everything's now getting drawn digitally, we get a great snapshot of what's happening on a microscopic level in their areas. So after we've built up a bit more and done a few more jobs and things, we're going to get a great insight into what's happening in their areas. We're going to see what policies are working, what policies aren't working, versus what the people in the industry are wanting. And so it's providing a digital bridge with the government, and it'll hopefully align everybody together on the same page, and so the government can then see this and react to change it rather than putting in some archaic law or something like that. It's going to help them adapt to the times better and
real time and stuff.
Yeah, and there's a number of other things as well, which I get very excited about.
Yeah.
Such as so everything that's built through the system is effectively a digital twin. So we've got a digital version in 3 dimensions of these structures, and so we can use that for wind tunnelling effects on the greater Perth area and get better designs and outcomes for smart cities. It's just a lot of buzzwords, really. A lot of buzzwords, but I'm really excited to see how that plays out once we do get enough data. Also on a scientific level, it's really valuable, and I'm looking forward to exploring further applications with agriculture, hydrology, which is water table stuff, and we're about to undertake a really exciting research project on some stuff about that. So that's going to give us indications of to what extent if climate change is affecting WA and how it is, and all this is the same algorithms that we're using to do engineering and just tweaked slightly. So I'm very excited about that side and what that will lead to. And we've got the theory at the moment we should be able to save about $100,000 per house that's built in about 5 years. So that's what we're working to, is just make it cheaper and better quality and more efficient.
Awesome. What have been some of the unexpected benefits of this journey?
Benefits? Ooh.
to you? Yeah.
For me, the biggest one is just what I've learned and the people I've met through it. So before Ignition, I had no connection to the technology world or the startup business world. Just the people I meet weekly through that, they're just so inspiring, and there's some fantastic minds out there in Perth wanting to do these awesome little things, and they're just so passionate about it. It's addictive hanging around them. If you go to any of these Space Cubed meetups and things, you just come out buzzing because someone gets up there and might talk about the most boring subject in the world, but they're so passionate about it. That passion gets absorbed, and you end up going, God, that is bloody cool. And then you apply it to your little boring passion, if it is boring anyway. Yeah. And it's addictive and contagious. So that's been one of the big benefits for me, is just been made aware that this community exists, passionate, innovative people.
Source of energy for you on a lonely path.
Absolutely. And the building industry is very secretive, so you keep your cards very close to your chest, and it's very aggressive. And whereas the tech and the startup industry, everyone collaborates. You might have your absolute competitor sitting next to you and swapping ideas and going, oh, that's really cool, and love how you did that, and you just help each other. And it's such a great collaborative environment, and for that, that's my big plus. No matter how Udrew goes, I've always got that now, and that's a big win for me. But yeah, some of the benefits, just about learning and meeting people, that's definitely the highlights. I've definitely got a lot more grey hair, so that's not really a great thing, but I'd say those two are definitely the big ones for me. And the personal satisfaction as well is nice, is getting people as excited as you are about this thing you've been passionate about for so long. That's very rewarding as well.
You sort of alluded to this earlier. What are some of the things you've learned about yourself on this journey?
I've learned that I stick to my principles and morals, which is not always a great outcome. Like, often I'll lose out because of it, but it's taught me that I do it. So it's not just in my head that I think I stick to my principles and things. So that's been good. And a lot of the feedback I get is that it's so refreshing just to talk to someone who's themselves. So I'm not a salesman by any means. So going to these meetings, a lot of people go, oh, it's so nice to talk to a real person, and really refreshing and things like that. So it's been nice feedback to hear that.
Yes.
What was the question again? I think I've got.
What have you learned about yourself on the journey?
I've learned that a bit of kindness goes a long way. So especially with the startup community, helping each other out, you get a better benefit by collaborating and just helping people than you do by trying to be conniving and backstabbing and things like that. It's just not worth the energy living your life like that. It's just much easier to be upfront, honest, and sharing, I guess, is the big one. I've learnt that the human body can survive off less than an hour sleep a night for about an 8-week period before things start getting a bit messy. But so there's been a lot of good and bad that I've learnt. That the majority of it's been great and very eye-opening as well. What the big thing for me was confidence as well. Like just learning to talk to people. I've always been more of a technical person, hiding in my dark laboratory over test tubes and things like that. So getting out there, and networking events I still find quite difficult, but I've got better at them. And they're very powerful things to have that ability just to be able to talk to people, and what you learn from them as a result. It's been great. There's a lot of things. I mean, I've taught myself coding as well, which is really cool. Yeah, and that's totally addicted to now. So I want to go study software engineering eventually if I ever have time again. Yeah, and just all these things that I'm really interested in, I didn't know existed, and so it's given me more ammunition for my natural curiosity to probably last a lifetime from here. So, awesome. Yeah.
What does the next 3 to 5 years look like?
Yeah, it could go either way. You might see me on the corner of a street, flip me a gold coin. That'd be great. No, I'm joking.
You still have this. Like, you still have this. Oh, yeah, it's going to really well, but it could be like,
But it could be horrible. This is the Jekyll and Hyde moment. I'm mentioning the roller coaster. So there's some really exciting things. It does change week to week. Yeah, pretty much how it looks. But ideally, by that point, we'll be national. As well as New Zealand, we're in talks about setting up a pilot there very soon. And I'd like to have our first few international regions up and running as well. Also, on the research development side of things, there's a few really cool ideas I want to have started working on, and hopefully have some validation on those soon. But yeah, ultimately we'd like to be a international company by that point, and expand our capabilities quite a lot as well, so we can do a lot more complex structures by that point. And hopefully just listen to the market, listen to the government, listen to the builders, and incorporate their feedback into it and just make the best damn thing we can. And for me, it's about continued innovation and research. We're using this as a means to keep going and eventually streamline the entire process of it and keep learning as we do it. And there's a lot on the cards.
Maybe get the house out of jeopardy as well.
Yeah, that would be nice. Just to not worry about that. That'd be really nice. But yeah, being a startup, funds are limited at the moment, so all I can really afford is to pay off the interest at the moment. So hopefully I'll start denting that soon. But at the end of the day, money is it's not overly high up on my priority list. It's more about getting the thing out there and people using it is my number one goal, and just making something really cool that solves problems. Yeah, and learning from it.
How do you keep yourself grounded through all of this?
My wife's really good at keeping me grounded. She always reminds me, after a good meeting or like an award or something, don't forget Thursday's still bin day. and so she keeps me nice and grounded and puts me in my place if my ego rears its head a bit. And also the fact that, I'm working so much, I don't really have a social life, so I've got nothing to really, no one to really gloat to anymore. So, it's just always work, and that's just my number one focus, work and my wife and son. My wife and son come first, of course. Don't worry, honey. And new baby coming in a few weeks, which we affectionately named it.
Yeah.
No, we don't know the gender yet, so it's just baby number 2.
Baby number 2.
Yeah. So that's this year for me. It's about getting a bit more time off and spending a bit more time with the family. But it's been great working from home mostly, so I can help out and do that stuff. So yeah, that's the short-term goal is to spend a bit more time not working. But I don't know if I could, to be honest, if I wanted to. Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome. To the person who's listening to this, who's got a great idea and they're like, oh, should I go ahead or not? What's your advice?
Don't listen to people who say it can't be done. You got to learn for yourself if it can or can't be. And you've always got the internet to check. And, if you're passionate about something, stick with it. And you'll get there eventually. Could take a year, could take a week. Be persistent. That's it. It's about persistence and passion. Definitely.
Awesome. And one of the final questions, well, I have another question for you after that, but that's specific for you. One of the final questions I nearly always ask my guests is, if you could upload a small piece of nugget of information or knowledge or something you picked up along the way into the collective consciousness so everybody just gets it. Like, oh, I wish everyone just got this. What would it be?
Oh, geez. That's pretty mind-blowing. The collective consciousness. One piece of information. So, look, I'd always say, do the right thing by yourself and by other people, and just, work with integrity, and, things will work out. So if you go around trying to sabotage or be a jerk to people, generally they're going to be a jerk and jerk back, and it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
But if you're genuine and passionate about something, then you'll find people are willing to be genuine and passionate back, and it just makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
If you've got good intentions. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, one of the last things is, I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you also put yourself down as dad joke connoisseur. So I want to ask, what's your current favourite dad joke? And we'll have a dad joke off here, because I've got one floating around at the moment. Oh no, put me on the spot. I should really prepare for these things. There's just so many good dad jokes, or bad dad jokes, depending how you say it. Oh yeah, the line between the two is very thin.
All right, so what's a wind turbine's favourite music?
I don't know.
They're just really big metal fans.
Shocking. The one I've got recently is, and I read this the other day. It was. I didn't want to admit that my dad was stealing from work as a roadside worker, but when I got home, all the signs were there.
That's a good one. I've got a bit of an adult-rated dad joke though, so it's probably
go on, close it out.
On PC, but what do you do if a bird shits on your windscreen? Don't ask her out again.
There you go, Tom. If somebody wants to come and find you for either. They want to know more about Udrew, or they want to book you for a stage performance, where can they find you?
I was about to say something really bad then, but look, hit me up on LinkedIn, go to our website, and there's a contact email there. Be happy to chat anytime. And if it's an idea, or if you've got a passion and you want to know where to start, I'd love to help out. I'm just super passionate about other passionate people wanting to solve problems, and I'm happy to help anytime. So, within reason.
There we go. Awesome. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you.
It's been fascinating to hear your journey, because I've no doubt that you're going to, I'd like you to come back on the podcast in, year or so's time, and you'll be telling me about how you've sold that house and gone to a new one and stuff like that. But it's fascinating to hear someone's journey to this point. And how real it's been, how scary it's been, how principled you've been as well with it.
Tried to be.
Yeah, tried to be. But also, it's just been fascinating, and it's been super real. And thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and share that story.
No, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, mate.